Nah, sorry. I'm so exhausted. I have so much stuff to do that I don't even give an F if things don't work out properly today, since today is Sunday where I do my casual videos. And that's why I can already give you quite quickly a TLDR. Because for everyone who doesn't want to watch this review, which will be shorter than usually anyway, since I don't think I have to cover so much about an Android tablet, I can tell you this much. If you want the best possible media consumption device, these two, the MediaPad M5, 10.1 and 8.4 are the ones to go for. If you want a better all-rounder, there are maybe alternatives, but these, in terms of hardware, yes. Otherwise, let's actually check that hardware and the design first. As you can see, it's quite thin. With about 500 grams, it's not super lightweight and not that easy to hold, and therefore you will need those bezels. And I actually have one little bit of a gripe, not with the fingerprint reader, because that one is placed well and it works quite fine. But the problem for me on the 10.1 version is that the button placement is a little bit weird, because usually you will have this one like this, maybe in a stand or whatever. And if you watch a video, you would like on most normal tablets, just want to change the volume, but you have to do this on this side. Now, if you are a lefty like me, you have to reach over the side and then kind of push it against, or with the right finger, still push. And you will still mistake them with the power button quite often, the volume rocker, which is just not perfectly placed. The buttons though, as you can hear, great tactile feedback, also a nice click, and they are good. But if you, for example, take the small one, which has the buttons also on the sides, if you use it like this, which you will mostly use it in landscape, you actually have those easily accessible, because if you have them now here, you can easily change the volume, but still sometimes mistake the button. The rest though, very, very similar on both, because like I said, super hardware, it doesn't really bend, it feels very rigid. For example, here we have the speakers on the back, top and bottom, along with the magnetic port, which works with the keyboard, then the cam, and everything else feels nice. It feels great in the hand. And the smaller one you will usually use like this. Fingerprint reader works just as well. If you have a little bit bigger hands than mine, you can easily hold it like this. Feels definitely more light, weight, and then of course the rest is very, very similar. Speakers then are here with the USB Type-C, obviously. Things have been covered. Now let's get into the display, and I will give you the demo here. But turn off the sound, because we will get into that later, because I want to talk a little bit about those later on. Okay, here we have them side by side. The brightness isn't quite the same, but I think it's good enough. So let me just tell you what I think. Both Quad HD, so 2560 by 1600, so this means 16 by 10, and you have a little bit of bezel at the bottom and top. But nice resolution, this one particularly super nice and sharp. This one not quite as much, and obviously since it's the same resolution and a bigger display, obviously isn't quite as sharp. But this, especially for example in apps where you have just more text, feels a little bit grainy. Something you will never see for media though, because there everything looks sharp, and the colors are absolutely great. Black levels are nice, white levels are nice, colors pop really bright. But you have to keep something in mind with the brightness. There is one particular level, if you go below that it feels dull, so you kind of sometimes have to keep them brighter than you would have to, which already brings me to my first annoyance when it comes to this device. Okay, let's check one thing here. Here we are in Chrome. As you can see, maybe you did not though, it got dull. This is my issue here. Now colors are dull, the white, everything is just muted because the brightness is changed to a lower setting. And here you can see now it gets brighter. And just remember this dullness. For example, also here in Google Docs, dull. Now, if I go for example in Flamingo, you see that one is nice and bright. And just to make it real perfectly clear, dull. Not dull. If I launch it now with SmartTask Launcher, which is a launcher that allows me to launch apps through itself, this is not dull anymore. So just remember, nice and bright and white. Dull. Let's go through Flamingo once again. Google Docs, nice and bright and white. Dull. So I don't know why that is a thing. It happens with Netflix, it happens with YouTube, it happens with Solid Explorer, it happens with most of my apps, which is just super annoying. And talking about super annoying, here's the next thing. Why in landscape mode I only have the home button and not the other two I don't get? Because if I rotate, they are there. If I don't, let's get back, as you can see, only one button, which is not the case here. So there are some software inconsistencies. The brightness thing is a thing of both. But otherwise, especially if you can circumvent it, because for me it's not an issue, I can access pretty much all my apps that I want through Smart Task Launcher. And this is the next thing that I want to go into. In case you have apps like this that just work in portrait, I would recommend you to just download the app rotation. It costs a little bit if you want it unlocked, but then you can force it and then every app works in landscape mode. So the brightness thing can be circumvented, but only if you use Smart Task Launcher. So just keep that in mind. But the display otherwise is top notch. But now let's get into those speakers, which I have to say are for a tablet just great. Absolutely. Okay, and now the big one, where I'm not even gonna try to get close to full volume because it would be just way too loud. Where are they? Here. Okay, so let's just call it what it is. This one is one of the best sounding smaller tablets. Absolutely, without a doubt. It is nice and loud, nice and high quality, and also full and warm, rich sound. So maybe 5 stars, but at least 4.5 stars. But only maybe just 5 stars because this one is the absolute king and gets 5 gold stars, which is my highest rating. Because this tablet, if I would blow the volume up all the way, it would be louder than most laptops that I've used. And seeing something as small, thin, and still lightweight one like this, I ask myself, why not at least every laptop sounds as good as this, because the sound here is absolutely incredible. Absolutely kind of phenomenal of how much sound they got out of it. Okay, for example, if you use Netflix or just TV shows and such that aren't that loud, then you may maybe have to actually use 100%, but it's such a good sound. And in most normal situations, I actually use this with like maybe 50-60%, didn't really need more. But since I've already talked about Netflix and such, Netflix does not work in HD yet. They kind of have to approve a few things, at least on Netflix side, and it should happen, I hope, quite soon, but so far this is not the case. So we've covered the display, we've covered the sound. And in both aspects, these are pretty much the best you can get, especially for this price on the Android segment. But what about the performance? And here I have to say it's pretty much the same on both. And as you can see, especially if you use kind of like normal lightweight apps, things feel nice and smooth. Google Plus not always, because especially on the small one, if it if it decides to use a free color mode, which it might do right now. No, it's actually not. As you can see, there it's kind of gets a little bit wonky, but usually it works out fine. But I would tell you just this: if you want to use it mostly for media consumption, these are the best ones. If you want to use it with a lot of apps, with some actual heavy use, then there are alternatives, maybe like something from Samsung, or I would actually say go for something like and my internet just seems to crap out, or something like the iPad, because I would still say that these are the best for media consumption. But if you want to use a ton of apps and get actually maybe something like productive done, which is possible with the keyboard to dock, these are okay. Because I want to show browsing real quick, because just so you get a glimpse of that, browsing is nice, smooth, it's okay, and most apps run fine. But you will also notice that the high resolution just does text or tax the CPU after all quite a bit. But since we're already talking about that, you can actually change the resolution here. As you can see, smart resolution. But no matter what I do, I don't really see a change. Maybe it happens automatically throughout and not directly. That's why I don't see it. But I personally would not just buy a Quad HD display and then run it on 1080p or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Performance is okay, but there are better ones. Now, when it comes to battery performance, the thing is here. You should not expect it to charge all that quick, which is a good thing, because the big one takes like roughly 4 hours, the smaller one maybe like a little over 3 hours, 3.5, which sounds a lot. But that's normal for every tablet, because you should not even try to quick charge them, because a tablet is something to usually hold on for longer, and you don't want to stress out the battery. You want to use it as long as possible. As long as possible is also the battery life on both, if done right, because I would say 8 to 9 hours on the big one, and maybe like 7 on the small one, because I did yesterday a YouTube rundown test, because most people I think will just watch media on these, and just for example YouTube all the way was at about 6.5 hours. In normal use I would say roughly like 7, maybe you can get to 8 if you just use it a little bit, maybe lightweight and such. This one 8 to 9, and over the course of I would say several days, since if you don't use it all that regularly is possible, because standby rain is great on both, especially on this one it's almost non-existent. But once the charge gets a little bit lower, it actually gets a little bit quicker. But here I would say multiple day use like 5 hours, and here like maybe 7 hours or 6, depending on how long you use it, obviously, it gets the job done. Now in terms of software, we have an up draw or we don't. That's optional on Huawei side, which is quite okay. The buttons can be rearranged. You can also use though the gestures that we've seen already on the P10 to switch the button. For example, a long press is home. If you swipe, it's for the last apps. But I personally just don't like the fact that I have to long press to get to the home, so I stick with the buttons. And like you've seen on the smaller one, it just doesn't have these. Not in landscape mode. I'm not quite sure why, but I've asked another YouTuber who has the same issue or the same thing, so it has. But I have to say, 2 fellow YouTubers of mine had no issue with the screen dimming, which is my personal biggest gripe, or just they don't see it, even though I've proven it. You've seen it. It is absolutely there. So, verdict, because I'm not going to cover the camera. In terms of design, both top hardware, very well built, button placement maybe not perfect one on the big one. The display's pretty much the best you can get on the Android segment, because nice, vibrant colors, sharp, still even on this one, even if it feels a little bit grainy, top, unless it dims, if you like it or not. The speakers though, especially on the smaller one, not quite as impressive as on this one, but I don't think you will get many, especially not with this display that can deliver such a sound, even though the MediaPad M3 from last year was about as good in terms of sound, not quite as high quality, but the performance was noticeably weaker, so you can go for this one. But this one for media, display along with that speaker system, wow. Wow. Performance, okay, on both. Battery life, I would wish for at least like 1 or 2 hours more, especially with the standby range just still not being on an iPad level, it's okay. And then I would say price-wise, this by now already available at like 380 euros, like 50 extra or maybe 100 for the LTE version, which I can't tell you if it works with phones, but usually it should work as a phone if you have the LTE version. The smaller one is at around 330. Obviously, once again, like 50 more if I'm not wrong for the LTE version. I can easily recommend them for media, because that experience is great. If you want something a little bit more of an all-rounder with some more power, and if you want to switch through many apps, because there I just noticed that they both go a little bit slower because they don't seem properly optimized, and the SoC still has a little bit of trouble using up the screen real estate, because this is bigger. It's not, for example, the same as you would have a quality display on a phone, because it just shows a lot less content. Here we have the same resolution, but so much more content, and that is just stuff that it has to render more. So they are not the best performers out there, but still on an almost flagship level. Let's say on an upper mid-range level at least, that, or maybe on a lower flagship level, depending on what you want to see it. So price-wise, an iPad you can get on a regular iPad by now cheaper, but you won't really get a better display, and you won't definitely get this sound out of it unless you want to go to the pro levels or pro models that are way more expensive. Personally, why is that dimming happening? That's pretty much my only gripe, besides, like, for example, Netflix not being able to watch it in HD, some inconsistency with, for example, the navigation bar, and some apps that sometimes crash, but it's not something major. So like I said, for media, totally, if you want an all-rounder, maybe emphasizing on media consumption as well, still go for these. But if you want the best possible performance, the most flexible device, there are alternatives there, even though not many, something like the S3, the Tab S3 or an iPad are the two most ones that I would like to call it. The S3 you can get sometimes on sale for quite a similar price, but that's it. Yeah, okay, until next time, bye.